Okay, Jeff, first of all, thanks for letting us have an opinion about movies at Barstool. Usually you're the gatekeeper, so that's a nice change of pace as of recent.
All right, Light Camera Barstool review time. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you know when we're going to come out with new reviews, new videos, and hit the like button as well. And below in the comments, let us know what you thought about Killers of the Flower Moon, which is the movie we are reviewing here today. Martin Scorsese, another movie, highly anticipated for longer than I even remember. I was looking at blogs came up on Barstool Sports today of when people talked about this, like 5+. It is crazy.
That's nuts. That long?
And for a long time, all we had was that screenshot of him and Lily Gladstone at the dinner table.
Eating dinner. Yeah, for like 10 years, it felt like. That was crazy.
That's all we had. So it is based on, yeah, that's right. What did we say on Twitter? He looks unrecognizable.
Yeah, exactly.
Joined by Kirk here, who Kirk Mann saw the movie as well. All four of us did. We bring in one of our coworkers after we discuss it because before we let it just dive into the realm of stupidity, we will bring in Che and see what he has to say about the movie. But based on a book from 2017, which I believe Gooch, you read the book, and I know Kirk, you've read the book.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll let you guys maybe throw some things about that. Quick synopsis of the movie for those who do not know for some reason what the movie is about. Again, based on a true story. Based on David Grant's broadly lauded best-selling book, Killers of the Flower Moon is set in the 1920s Oklahoma and depicts a serial murder of members of the oil-wealthy Osage Nation, a string of brutal crimes that came to be known as the Reign of Terror. Very large cast. Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, Jesse Plemons, Lily Gladstone. Those are the four that have the most screen time. Lily Gladstone picking up a lot of Oscar buzz.
Appropriate. Leo
as well. Ken Jekin character with the hat. Love that.
How to get appropriate.
Brendan Fraser, who we're going to have to dedicate a whole 90 seconds, at least a minute or two to talk.
It's an Amish film, Ken Jack? I didn't realize that Scorsese was it's an Amish production?
It's got the things.
Well, that's more that's more cowboy than I thought.
There, once you get this down,
the shadows did him no favors. Okay, there you go. Okay,
and you'll be also incorporating DiCaprio's stupidity throughout the episode.
Yeah, exactly. He's like Lenny of Mice and Men. It'll be fun.
Yes, he is.
John Lithgow and a couple smaller roles that people knew about, but those people that I mentioned are kind of the main people in the movie. Some great cameos. Also, Sturgill Simpson, currently in 2 movies out in theaters right now, for those who are fans of the musician Sturgill Simpson.
Kentucky represent, baby. Let's go.
That's right. He's
in Righteous Gemstones too, right? Wasn't he? Just recently?
Yeah, he's in a lot of stuff. 92% around Tomatoes from critics, 85% from audience, which is higher than I thought walking out. When I walked out of that, I was like, this is going to be a low audience score. It is not. Everyone I've talked to, for the most part, pretty much likes this movie. And, of course, let's say the big thing, the runtime is 3 hours and 26 minutes, not 4 hours. People are just saying it's 4 hours long. It's just not. I'll start quick off the top. Quick thoughts, and we'll get into pros, I assume, because I assume consensus is we'll start with pros, then cons. I finally landed on a score for this. I think it's weighted into great. Its legs are a little bit into the really good category. It's like kind of in both for me. But I did really like it. I'm right now at a 92. I'm going to see it again, but I will say it is pretty fantastic. Does it reach upper echelon Scorsese for me? No, it doesn't. It's not in the top 10 for me of Martin Scorsese films. But very well acted, incredibly well paced, great storytelling, some very creative storytelling elements from Martin Scorsese, which I fucking love, which we'll talk about. Like, I just like one of the best things I've seen someone do in a movie ever. But I really liked it. There's one thing for me that's holding this back, and it has to do with when they get into the second act of the movie, and that is what I think we'll probably talk about a lot in cons as well. So 92 for me right now after one watch. Ken Jack, you just saw it like 20 minutes ago. What do you rate it?
Yeah, it just came back. I'm at a hard 89 out of 100 for me. And I think that's not, that puts it still within like the upper echelon of movies for this year. I don't think it's in like the top tier of Scorsese, which we're going to do tiering of Scorsese later, and we'll see where we end up on that. I don't think it's like among his elite movies, but I think that there are a lot of things about it that are really well done and really out of Scorsese's normal wheelhouse in a lot of ways. And a lot of things about this movie are way out of people's normal wheelhouses in general, which is very impressive. We'll get more into that in pros and cons. I really liked it a lot. There are problems that I think will get people that are maybe like a Che or like dullards. Dullards are going to have trouble with this movie in general. And I think that's going to make it a little bit harder for a lot of people to appreciate the great parts about this and put it even into this like middle upper level of Scorsese's movies. But at the same time, like I think if you go into it with an open mind, you'd really like it. There's so many great things about it, but I want to save it all for when we get into the more nitty gritty.
Gooch score and then Kirk score.
Yeah, I landed at an 86 out of 100. So still really great score for me. I went on Friday with my mom and dad who were in town, and I kind of felt bad at first because I was like, can I drag my parents to this 3.5
Come to
hour?
New York, spend the whole day.
Well,
4 full hours with the trailers.
Well, if you know, I mean, New York, it just rains every Friday and Saturday this year. So, I mean, it was pouring out. There's really nothing to do. So I was like, you guys want to do this? And they're like, yep. And I'll tell you what, it kept their attention the whole time. They didn't think it was that long either. So the pacing on this movie, I think that is got to be one of the biggest pros. We'll get more into it. The pace, it's paced so well. Really did not feel like 3.5 hours. Acted incredibly once again. I thought he did a great job of taking what is kind of a very dense book with a lot of moving parts and a lot of characters and bringing it into a 3.5 hour film and making it digestible and getting the entire story across. So kudos to Scorsese. We'll get more into it. But yeah, 86 out of 100 for me.
Kirk, where do you have it rated? And then we'll start with you on pros.
Okay, Jeff, first of all, thanks for letting us have an opinion about movies at Barstool. We're usually the gatekeeper, so that's a nice change of pace as of recent. I would give it an 88, I suppose. I think I talked to you about it too. I had the same thought you did. It's about as close to a great movie as you can get without, for me, being a great movie. There are moments of greatness. We'll get to the con stuff, I guess, later on. You think about it now, the fact that the word is cons and the guy cons is such a negative. I never really made that connection until now, but that's fantastic.
That's where it started.
Is that the origin story?
The etymology.
What stands out? Well, we'll get into all this stuff, but a couple of things thrill me. First of all, as I'm getting older, I'm not as old as Scorsese. I'm not as old as these guys. But, you know, my favorite artists are like probably Springsteen and Scorsese. And I like watching these two guys confront getting older and death in their own way. And this movie for me has a bunch of great performances, but one standout performance for me that means a lot. So, you know, there are things I don't like about it, but there are many more things I do like about it. I have it as my third favorite movie of the year. So, you know, 88 out of it's not Oppenheimer, but it's 88 out of 100 for a late in the game Scorsese movie. Fantastic.
Right, but okay, I'm going to let you get to you'll start with pros, Kirk, and I know who you're going to say with the acting, but can we agree that if you have the Oppenheimer Best Picture ticket right now, you're very happy you're holding that
Feeling
ticket?
good.
Like
yeah,
that.
You're feeling good. Yeah,
I don't know what'll beat that, but yeah, you can start out, Kirk, with pros because I think we all know who you're talking about acting wise.
Yeah, it's 2 Oscars in a row for Brendan Fraser, who I thought stole the film with an understated, almost muted performance in Act 3.
I have not spoken to my client.
Look how he was still big though. That's a big boy scene.
Yeah, it's so, you know, the actor who I've probably watched the most and probably means the most to me of the real actors, not kind of the guys, is Robert De Niro. And to watch De Niro give a great, big, wild performance, to me, he's almost oddly, a lot of people think Lily Gladstone, I understand. His character's almost the center of the movie. It almost goes through him. He's almost Daniel Plainview-ish in a way. And to see, I could watch that first scene with him and DiCaprio when they're sitting there just talking back. If that was 4 hours, I could watch that. It was just great to watch De Niro in a great film again, probably for the last time, directed by the guy who he's most linked to. That's the collaboration I think is the greatest in film history. To see that one more time in 2023 was just, I was overwhelmed by it. It meant so much to me as a film goer. That's a performance. And other people are great, and we'll get to those as well for sure. But that's a performance that means the most to me. And I will say, I don't think he'll win. I'm sure Robert Downey Jr. will win. But that, to me, is the best supporting actor performance this year is Robert De Niro in Killers of the Flower Moon. For me.
Yeah, I don't know where Ken Jack, where I'll go, like, Kirk and I talked about this the other day, and I'll repeat it on here, is his, like, De Niro's energy was, like, surprised. Not that I thought he'd be this, like loser glom with no like voice.
He was going.
Yeah, he had some like pop in this movie, and I was like, oh shit, it really carried him.
More pop than the Irishman anyway. Trying to kick that guy on the ground
for sure.
But yeah, it's one of those movies where I walked away from it, and like these are like you're saying, like De Niro powerhouse guy, Leo powerhouse guy. And I don't think it was the best performance of either of their careers, but it was easily like, after having seen so many of their movies, one of the most transformative for both of them. You know what I mean? Because it's so rare that I can watch either of their movies and think anything other than like, that's Leo, that's Robert De Niro. Like, you see their face and associate the name, you know what I mean? But I think they did really good jobs, both of them, and De Niro especially, becoming a character outside of their comfort zone, which is so impressive. Like you're saying too, just like so this late in the game in his career to play like this Oklahoma oil man, when you look at him and you just think like, that's fucking Italian Ginzo man number 3. Like that's all he does. Like he does. That's his character. And like to go way outside of his comfort zone, play something totally different, like this sort of character, and to totally nail it was so impressive. And I agree with you. I think it's easily one of my favorite supporting actors or acting performances of the year. Again, not to say it's like a pantheon of best De Niro or anything like that, but he's easily one of the best of the year. I completely agree.
It is like, it's one of those things where like I keep thinking about him in that movie. I guess I've only seen it once, but I'm thinking about especially just like him when he's meeting with like the tribe, and he's trying to explain to them, I'm going to do whatever I can. I'm like thinking that I'm not even seeing De Niro. Like I am just like seeing that character,
right?
Which is so weird. Cause even like you said, even in his best stuff, like I see him in good, like I see him in all these other movies, especially from Scorsese. I see him like, which is not a knock on him, but like I see De Niro. This I don't, which is it is kind of crazy.
Yeah. I mean, is the accent perfect? It's probably definitely not perfect, but it almost doesn't even matter, as dumb as that sounds. I mean, it's kind of Max Cady-ish, the accent, but it's fine. It's believable enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean,
very different.
Kijak, you said not top echelon for De Niro. I think this is a top echelon De Niro performance. He was fantastic. And like Kurt said, the first role that came to mind, or the first character that came to mind every time they focused on him, was There Will Be Blood, Daniel Plainview. Because he was just so like understated in how intimidating he was in every single room he was in. Like he nailed it. Absolutely
very duplicitous, and that's very rough for him, I think, because usually he's a guy you want to sort of empathize with in a way.
Yeah.
And especially as he's gotten older, like he more like the older guy roles, and like he was just so perfect as that sort of menacing, duplicitous dude, two-faced in every single way.
Like everyone really put together again. Brendan Fraser, like it was the line delivery for that one line from Brendan Fraser. I did kind of look around the theater. I was like, is anyone else gonna laugh at this like wild. I am?
It was problematic for me, but I get it. I'm still not sure if he's a good actor or not. Still, after last year, I hated The Whale. Like I'm still not sure if but I'm intrigued by him. But it's like, was Scorsese there that day? Was he filming this freaking cameo that day? Like what was going on? I don't even understand it.
I liked when he called Leonardo DiCaprio boy. He's like, you stupid boy. And I'm just like, yeah, fucking get his ass. Get his ass, dude. Someone needs to put him in his place.
It does tie into the, with DiCaprio. Like at some point in his career, DiCaprio embraced the fact that he can play somebody who's stupid, and he's just run with it. And he's not afraid to play a moron. He's not afraid to play somebody who's, kind of ugly. He's not afraid to like these big stars. And he's the biggest movie star there is. They generally don't do that. And he goes, I mean, that character is a moron from the start.
Yeah.
De Niro is like, you know how to read, right? I mean, and you just go from there. It gets and he becomes more and more sort of evil as the movie comes along, but he's still a child the whole time. This is a massive star. Like picture, Tom Cruise would have never done this in 2003. Like Harrison Ford. I said this my show yesterday. These big stars I knew growing up, nobody would play a role like that. Nobody.
He's like a grown-up Gilbert Grape, basically. It kind of reminded me towards the end of it of
stupid. Pretty close.
It wasn't that far off. It was basically like a soup. It's like a souped-up version of It's like a souped-up version of Making a Murderer. I don't know if you saw that on Netflix with Brendan Dassey. It was just like the guy just comes up and he's like, "Yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio, you want to go see WWE? Admit you murdered these people." And he's like, "All right, Uncle, I did it." And it's like, you are a moron. And I almost feel empathy for you, but at the same time, I don't, because you are just like this greedy, evil dude. But it is, but that's kind of good. That kind of like the complexity of the character kind of like gets you more enthralled with it.
He's also become like the master of these, because I guess the one in this wasn't solo. Plemons was there to play off of him, but he's become kind of the master of these solo scenes. Like you think about the scene in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which was, I mean, maybe the best part of the movie in the trailer. The one here, after he gets arrested, he's basically talking by himself. He's reacting to somebody differently than Once Upon a Time, but he is so good in that setting. And it's funny because he sort of got a legacy Oscar for The Revenant. And you would think like, that's it. But like, he's just doing probably better roles since then. But it's like they just felt bad, and it's like this whole second half of his career is like just as good, maybe more impressive. Kind of insane. Let's talk. So we're gonna bring our coworker Stephen Che into here in a minute. I just sent him the link to join. Let's talk the positives of the run time, because he was on the opposite end. We'll do cons after we bring in Che, because we liked it. He's gonna tell us why he didn't love it, but the runtime. His Scorsese's editor, Thelma Schoonmaker, is the best at editing a movie. Like, did anyone here feel a slug at any point in the movie? They're like, this is going on too long, because it breezed by as much as any three, and that's like Avengers, Oppenheimer, Blade Runner. Like, this cruised by to me.
Yeah, I mean, could it have been 3 hours and like 8 minutes? Of course, but did it need to be? No. I don't want to get in the cons here. I would say, to me, there was a bit of repetitiveness going on with the tragedy in the movie, where I was starting to say, okay, like, we're doing this again. That a little bit of that for sure, but I was never bored during the movie. I think that's an A- cinema score, which again, it's a 3 hour and 30-minute complete downer. Like, it's a depressing movie, and audiences like it, which is wild. I think Wolf of Wall Street, I was stunned, had like a C+ cinema score from the audience.
That is shocked, because that is talked about in such a high regard by so many people.
Right. So yeah,
I will say, to the point of the tragedy thing, that is something that I almost look at as a pro for Lily Gladstone, because she got asked to react to like 5 different family members dying and kind of found a way and to like give us a unique sort of reaction as an audience to that basically same level tragedy happening over and over and over and over and over again. And very difficult task for any actor, any actress, let alone someone who doesn't really have this like massive repertoire of movies in her back pocket. And I think she did a really good job with that. It does, I agree with you, at a point get repetitive. Like, fucking again? So I'm going to do something? But I guess that's the kind of the feeling he's trying to elicit, right?
Right. It does hit those emotional beats. I think that's why it cruises by. It's like, I think the deaths are all spaced out pretty well, where it's like, okay, build up, moment, reactive to that. Some of them hit harder than others. Obviously, the house explosion is fucking crazy. That whole scene and the whole aftermath is like, it's pretty emotionally wrenching for like someone who's connected and watching that movie. But I do think like that is the key. And it's like, we'll talk. We're this week we're going to be ranking, and on this episode, if you're listening in podcast form, we're doing a tier ranking of his movies. And like, I know some people who don't love like how like The Departed ended and all that. Like, it's too much. Like, it's a lot going on at once. And I know that can get to the point with these types of movies, but I did think this, like, again, he had a much different way in approaching it. Where there were a lot, but it was I kind of expected going in there to be more and quickly. But no, they were kind of spaced in a way that, again, it played into the runtime and didn't have it really bog things down.
Did you see the movies he cited as like what he used as inspiration for how he wanted to pace the movie? He used Ari Aster movies. He used Midsummer and Beau is Afraid. And it kind of makes sense. You brought up like something, it'll build up towards a massive event and then just immediately reset and then build up again.
And it seemed to work in that way, yeah.
Let's bring in our coworker Stephen Che. Che movie. Okay, I'm gonna preface. So I'm gonna be nice, because Che and I went at it on Twitter, kind of in a joking manner. Though I was more angry that the headline made it seem like you shouldn't go to the movies. Che is a movie guy. Che watched a lot of Oscar movies, which I know you weren't saying that. Look, let's be honest. That was me projecting more from the blog this summer from our other coworker Chris Castellani, who wrote like a very anti-movie theater blog. Anyway, point being, Che didn't like it as much. I actually didn't like it at all. It seems like as though you disliked the movie.
It had some redeeming qualities, but overall, as an experience, not one of the top 100 movies I've seen. No.
You were very anti-runtime, though.
Runtime was a big thing. I thought, if I say positive things, I thought DiCaprio was very good. De Niro has played that role so many times, like it was kind of nothing new. The cinematography was okay. Outside of that, the story was just way too long and drawn out.
When does De Niro play that role, Steve?
Like an oil baron.
Like, when does he play in Oklahoma?
Not exactly an oil baron, but like he very similar to roles he's played in other Scorsese films. Like kind of the big brother, like he's an uncle in this one, but kind of the father figure, big brother type guy, like in Goodfellas or other movies, Casino.
But the big difference is in those movies, he's never presenting himself as a good guy. He's always just like the slicked back criminal guy, and that's his thing. This guy, I think the big difference is he has his two faces.
Right. I do see the Goodfellas similarities a little bit, though. Even gets pointed out in court by the witness, which is almost the exact same shot as Goodfellas, which is actually pretty great 32 years later. But yeah, I get that.
Where would you have cut it though? Because I think that's where we're just bringing for a devil's advocate point. Because you're not, I will say, you're definitely not the only person who thought it was too long. I'm surprised more people don't find that to be an issue. I will say we had a lot of our other coworkers saw it; they didn't think that at all. But obviously, some people were like, "This movie's too fucking long." Where would you have cut it out? It's almost like a convince us here. Where do you think they could have cut it out?
Before I say anything, how in detail can I get?
Oh, we're in full spoilers, so pretend listening. Okay. Again, if you're listening and you haven't seen it, I don't know what you're doing at this point, but yeah.
Okay. All right. So I can be a little more unfiltered than I was on Barstool Rated today. So runtime, 3 hours, 26 minutes with previews, 3 hours, 45 minutes, a large chunk of time. My issue with the film was, and I understand historical accuracy and wanting to do that. So the main, the Leonardo DiCaprio's wife, her family, like they're the ones that are getting knocked off by Leo and Robert De Niro. We don't. I understand wanting to have compassion and stuff like that. I'm not wildly sad when they get killed from a character development standpoint. Obviously, it's a big tragedy and all that stuff, and the killing is in mass numbers. I didn't think they needed to go so far with it where it's like, oh my gosh, they're going to kill someone else I just met and like barely care about because of the character development. Character development to me is very important. I don't think they did that enough with the side characters that got knocked off to be like, all right, well, I'm really bummed about this one. It's like, oh, wow, it's another tragedy for Leo's wife and for kind of him to deal with. But that for 2 hours, more than that even, is excessive when the fact that they didn't bring in like Jesse Plemons for his like investigation. Outside of going to the house and being like the Leonardo DiCaprio saying his wife was sick, Jesse Plemons got zero pushback from anyone. That seemed like the most open and shut case. Like, Kirk, you had way more pushback on any true crime thing that you've ever done than Jesse Plemons did in this movie.
That is true.
So I wish it would have seemed harder for him. It just seemed like he snatched up everybody. They told him everything he needed to hear, and it was a pretty open and shut case.
I don't think we disagree on that. Like I was saying before you came on, I think if I had any knock with the movie, the death stuff got a little repetitive for me. But I would agree with you on that. And if you wanted to trim 20 minutes out of it, that's probably where I would have gone.
But and I'll go because I know, I don't think that's that insane of a take.
Oh, that's fair.
But a whole like hour and a half out of it, I think is like, I think you lose all the emotional punch there.
Are you really remembering Anna's sisters that well?
Yeah, the deaths were pretty. They were pretty significant though.
I feel like
certainly like a house being blown up, like yes, like that sticks with you. But like, do you really care about what's Leo's wife's name in it?
Molly.
Do you really care about Molly's husband at all? No.
The one who De Niro's sort of in charge of?
The guy whose house gets blown up. He's married to Rita.
Rita and Bill?
Anna. Yeah, Rita and Bill. Like, we learned about that guy for 2 seconds. He's dead. All right. Like, I feel bad that it's Molly's sister. I have zero attachment to that dude. Why am I feeling bad that he's shrapnel?
I think it's more about sort of how deep into it DiCaprio's getting and how much De Niro. Mm-hmm. It's almost more about De Niro and DiCaprio than it is about those characters.
Certainly, I just think that it agreeing with you that the killing got repetitive where it could have been shortened. 20 minutes being chopped, I probably would have done a little bit more and maybe focused on a little bit more character development of the people that got slayed.
So I think when I was watching this, I almost, in like where you were looking for an investigation more from Plemons and everything like that, I feel like they kind of satisfied the inquiry requirements of this movie throughout the entire second act, where just they have consistently, like you're saying, like people are dying, and they kind of show how almost inconsequential it is
Right.
that this many people in the Osage are dying, and they're just piling up bodies nonstop. They have to go hire this detective. The detective can't find anything. That's part of their inquiry. They try to get these other people down here to do things. Go to Washington. That guy gets killed. Like, that's all part of this whole grand investigation. I view Plemons coming in as just part of that investigation, not the entirety of the investigation, if that makes sense.
That's a good point. I think the better argument, Che, is like, why didn't everybody in town just figure out that De Niro was doing this all along? Like, it is kind of obvious watching the movie. You're like, well, who does this benefit? It benefits, it benefits De Niro. Like that I think is something I thought about during the movie as well.
Since we're in spoilers, I'll let you. Where did you stand? Because Che, you teased to me before I even saw it. You were like, "Wait till the ending." What? Where do you? Because I'll say we're in the pros part of this. I think the ending is one of like the coolest decisions I've seen someone make in a movie in a long time. You didn't. Why didn't you like it?
So we're talking about when they're doing like the wrap up, being like,
it ends up the whole thing is narrated by this like radio broadcast.
In the 50s or something.
Came by Jack White.
They invented podcasting, true crime podcasting.
Yeah. So they're doing it, and it's a complete replacement of what would normally be in a biopic: black screen, white text. So and so does this. So and so died. So and so not convicted. For me, I thought it hit home way because it's like this goofy, wacky noises, and they're doing like it's like, oh, none of this shit fucking matters. And then fucking Martin Scorsese comes on screen and very somberly reads the final line, and you hear about what happened to her character, Lily Gladstone's character, Molly, at the end of the movie.
That's a great movie. That's the greatest living director, the greatest director this country's ever produced. Maybe his last time ever making a movie. It's gonna be the last time. You didn't enjoy that?
Hated it. So it was
wow. I didn't know your opinion on that yet because we didn't talk about it because it's very spoilery. But okay, I didn't know if you hated it or not.
Hated it
just because you're in this for 3 hours plus, almost 3.5 hours. You're in this mode of being like, all right, like this is like shocking racism and killing and all this stuff, and then these big themes, and then for the ending to be like, and now here's this thing, and they're doing all these like jingle jangles and doing a xylophone, like took me way out of it. I even turned to Jerry and was like, what the fuck is going on here?
When you turn to him?
I think that's almost kind of important too, because that is kind of what this story, like, think about this. This is like a genocide of an entire culture essentially for money, and like it became like not even a footnote in American history. You didn't learn about something like this. It was something where like you were the luckiest. If you'd be the luckiest person in the world if you heard that radio broadcast in 1960 or whatever. It's like, the Osage died. And it's like that's all they got out of it because people didn't give a shit. You know what I mean? And like that, I think is poignant in its own way.
That's an interesting point. I hadn't thought about
that'd be the one thing that I would like. Like I'm never like, and I would never attempt. Like if you think it's too long, like, I think it is an incredibly fair. There's a Martin Scorsese movie that I think is way too long. It's called Wolf of Wall Street. Like I think it can be a critique if you have fair and reasonable, like just reasons. Especially you within spoiler, I think you're giving like a fair reason if I don't agree with it. But that'd be the one. The ending is the one I'd love to convince you on to like. Give it a different shot?
Would you have felt different, Shay? Because I think I said this to you, Jeff. Would it have made more sense to you if they bookended it? If the movie started like that and then ended like that? Because it does seem completely out of nowhere.
Yes, actually, that would make a lot more sense.
Yeah, I think I think that probably would have been a better movie. Because I had to say I really liked it because it reminded me in a weird way of the end of Fabelmans, where Spielberg kind of inserts himself at the very end of that movie. It's kind of a walk off. I sort of liked it. It was like a cousin to that, but I did feel like if it started like that quickly, then began the movie, would have made more sense. Yeah.
Yeah. What was that? The Wonder did that last year, where it opened and closed with the director on screen, setting the stage.
True. Actually, the movie did start with Scorsese anyway, telling me to enjoy the movie.
That's true.
It's very true.
You personally.
I think
that was interesting.
Something to note with the length is that I think that there are plenty of scenes you could cut out of like literally any movie that's ever made ever. But I think if you do, it's because the scene sucked or was not important for the story. And there are scenes in this movie that can be cut because they don't serve the story, but those scenes are great. So why do that? You know what I mean? And like, that's where I usually found any of this. There were plenty of scenes where it's like, this doesn't serve the primary, arc of this storyline, but all those scenes are still amazing. And like, if those scenes sucked, I'd be like, obviously 86 of those, because we're wasting time here and this scene is terrible. But I feel like they left enough on the cutting room floor where everything that I got was a very polished product, and I enjoyed every scene I was watching, even if I knew and was cognizant of the fact that it was not very, very vital that I'm super paying attention, or otherwise I wouldn't understand the storyline.
Here's a question I'll flip to you guys. Do you think this movie is rewatchable? I personally do not.
No, it's just not. But it's not made to be.
No, but I'll never factor that in a score, right?
Like everyone's comparing it to 12 Years a Slave, which I think's a decent comparison. I mean, I am not. I'm not watching that movie again. That doesn't mean it's a good or bad movie, though.
Yeah.
I want to watch this movie. I'll be honest.
I'll see it again for sure, but I won't watch. Like, I'm going to see it again because we do this. But I don't factor that into like rating again. Like 12 Years a Slave again, even though 12 Years a Slave is significantly more brutal in this because like there's like this has some humor and some lighter moments, but that is like fuck. But like doesn't make it a bad movie. It's like its intention is not to be like this isn't supposed to be Casino. You're not supposed to be good. Like it's not supposed to have
like a Marvel movie or something. Yeah,
it's fun time.
Definitely, right. I mean, if that's how you grade it, then you're right. Like it's definitely not something you're going to watch over and over. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I know you, Che, and we got to let you go because you got human things to do. You said something. We were on the day we're recording this. You were on Barstool Radio. You mentioned a thing that you would have changed, which I think I agree with. And I don't know. I think we all may agree with. So we can let that be the kind of lead into the con section. Did you think that they needed to get to the like detective, more investigation part of this sooner? Is that what you were saying? Like the second act?
Yeah. And honestly, this was, people are being like, oh, this is the guy that doesn't like Oppenheimer. Like, fuck this guy. Like, my critiques of both of these are pretty similar. Like, I wish in Oppenheimer, the whole like second act where it's in black and white in that whole courtroom case, like we're talking about that guy getting security clearance, which he didn't have for most of the movie. Like that, in my opinion, didn't need to be the full point of it. And if it was, I would have made that a lot earlier and shortened it. For this movie, yes, I wish Jesse Plemons is great. His investigation, I would have liked to see a little bit more in detail, as opposed to him just knocking on like two people's doors, showing up at a pool hall and being like, all right, well, we got all the answers. We got this guy. We got this guy. Like, I would have liked to see this been a little bit more of a struggle than been like, all right, kind of an open shut case. And it seeming very easy when it was like, all right, well, I wish they would have come down here sooner. This would have been handled, many death, more people would be alive had they come.
You rehash a lot of stuff that you already got uncovered by the other inquiries, which were like when the private investigator sits down with Leo and Molly, and like he has this whole conversation with him, like, this is what's happening. This guy's telling me that this is what's going on, and then I'm going to get the more details from him later. Like, you're learning all of this stuff, which is like basically what you would happen if you were doing the same thing with Jesse Plemons. So you already learned all these things. So instead of going backwards and rehashing what you already learned through the private investigator, through the other guy that was going to go to DC, shit like that, you already learned that. Now we have that information. You add new information with Jesse Plemons and the FBI, and then you move forward. And I think that was better than going backwards, if that makes sense.
We'll expand on that.
No resistance
with but that's
outside of like Molly Leo being like, oh, she's sick, come back like on Friday. That was the only resistance Jesse Plemons got.
I just felt like it was such a house of cards. It was such a small town that once the bigger guys came in, it crumbled quickly.
Yeah, it was not good criminals. These were bad criminals. It was just in a perfect spot for them to operate with impunity.
Yeah, they knew they were fucked. That's why they kept killing off every investigator that came to town.
Yeah, and no one said anything. They were not good criminals. That much is very, very clear. Everything was very obvious. Everyone seemed to know what's happening within minutes of getting there, including the private investigator. And like that all was very easy to figure out. And because most of the other people in the town already knew what was going on, at least the white people. So like that, I feel like was all. You got to just remember they kind of sucked at this. They were just in a spot where no one cared what was going on because it was Osage getting in trouble and not like white people in fucking New York City or whatever.
One question you guys may know: how old is Robert De Niro supposed to be in this movie?
It's weird. At the beginning, he's supposed to be pretty young. Like he's supposed to be, I think, like in his late 40s. And I think he's supposed to be in his mid 20s.
When they said he died in 47, I was like, he died in 47. He was on
better
death's
question
door
is
right here.
How old is Jesse Plemons' character?
Well, he keeps calling DiCaprio's son, which I thought was strange, considering he's younger than DiCaprio, and I felt that role was written for somebody 10 or 15 years older. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Che, we'll let you go. Thank you for coming on. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Go to the movies. Get popcorn.
I know he's a movie guy. That's why. Again, I was talking. Yeah, whatever. We won't get into that anymore. I actually don't fully like him, and I kind of are in the same space there. So I guess I disagree with you in a little bit, Ken Jack. I do get the House of Cards thing. I get what both you and Kirk are saying, but you can't bring him in the beginning of the movie, otherwise it's fucking ridiculous. Like Clemens can't be around like, oh, what's going on here? But there's something about that like kind of second act that for me, like I kind of wish he had been introed a little earlier. Like I kind of want him just like a little deeper in it earlier on in the movie.
But then do you feel the same? Like I feel like the whole big thing with this, right, is like the Osage are just being ignored. No one gives a rat's ass about these people getting just whacked on every corner every day, nonstop. And if he comes in really early, I feel like that kind of undermines that whole point that's trying to be made. Like, you know what I mean? That it took like the lengths they had to go to and the amount of people that had to die and the amount of money that had to change hands in order to actually get someone there. I feel like that's like an important point of the movie. And I think that kind of gets undermined if you get them there too quickly.
Kirk, where do you throw cons on here? Where do you not our coworker Captain Cons? Where do you the negatives for the movie?
Well, that I think we said that, and like first of all, Lily Gladstone is great in the movie, and if she wins an Oscar, I think she wants to run as lead actress, and
which is kind of crazy.
It is. If she wins it, great. Supporting actress, that'd be fantastic. It gets a little with her character, and this is a criticism I've seen. I think it's not inaccurate. She kind of drifts aside a little bit, and almost becomes like. It's almost like she's like torture, like she's just sick the whole time, and it's her, getting sicker and sicker, getting injected more and more and more and more, and it's kind of like, well, all right. I would say that they kind of lose focus with her, whatever, 60% of the way in. She's great in it though, and yeah, as I said earlier, I think there's a moment where I was sitting there thinking, boy, it's really obvious. They're telling me maybe that's why, but it's really obvious to me that this really benefits De Niro and DiCaprio and his brother. Like, why hasn't anybody else figured out this guy is obviously the mastermind behind this? But these are, minor like criticism. And I thought, Frasier was awful. But I mean, I'm nitpicking here with the criticism. I'm overthinking it, I think, to some extent.
When who does the oh my God, hold on, I gotta. I know national anthem. No, the famous national anthem.
When they fucks up, just not.
Carl Lewis. Carl Lewis sing the national anthem. When he goes, in the middle of it. That was me with Brendan Fraser. I was like, what happened here? I was like, oh no, what's that? What is that line delivery?
I did like how they went ballistic, and then immediately Leo's just like, yeah, well, I'll talk to him. I don't care. It's like, no, come on, you fool.
Gooch, negatives for you?
Biggest negative, Ernest Burkhart, not that ugly of a man. Really did not need to ugly up Leo that much. That's just a nitpick.
Let's take a peek. Let's take a peek at Ernest Burkhart.
For like that time period in America, there were no hot guys in America then. I mean, he was as good as they come. Other one, I do somewhat agree with Shay's take that I do wish the investigation had been fleshed out more, maybe less with the tragedy in the second act. I think the second act is probably where any negatives you have about the movie, any negative feelings, that's probably where they come from. It does just kind of drag a second, maybe not drag is the right word, but it does get repetitive in the tragedy sense. Outside of that, no, I really enjoyed this movie. I like Western, so the setting just kind of played into what I like. And I will recommend this to most people I know, most guys I know, even though it is 3.5 hours long, because I do think
I don't know if I would recommend it, but I've been seeing so many people who I didn't know if they'd like it or not like it that I think I was going to recommend it, but I was going to have like a caveat. Like even our coworker Tommy's son, I give him a pretty heavy caveat of like, look, you're not going to leave the theater at like 11 o'clock being like, hey, what a great time. But like, it is a good movie. And I don't think it needs that. It seems like enough people quite like it. I'll raise one more question, is that my other thought on this is like, it's not like I have a ton of negative, but because of like what it is, because of how the story is told, because of how he chose to tell it, like, can it be much better than that like low A? Like I'll start you, Kirk. Like, is there like, it's one of those. I'm going to make a comparison which I shouldn't make, But I always say this for Godzilla vs. Kong. Like, how much better could Godzilla vs. Kong have been than like the 82 that I like?
Yeah.
That's about as good as it can be. And I'm not saying this
Ceiling.
is that, but like, I don't know how much better it could have been than this.
Right. I've been waiting for, I don't know, 30 years or whatever for a Terrence Malick movie with like a structured script and like a story I could follow the whole time and not just following a flower around for 50 minutes. He's one of my favorite directors. But this is, to me, like a Terrence Malick movie with a story. Like I finally got it. Happens to be the
That's
best
a great comp.
whoever lived. You kind of look like Terrence Malick right now, Ken Jack, with that hat.
Yeah, if I was just a little bit bolder.
Yeah. So no, I think it's interesting too. If you've read the book, it's interesting the direction that Scorsese directed this. I think Eric Roth, who wrote the screenplay, originally wrote Forrest Gump, a bunch of other things. I think his script, I'm guessing, was more in line with the novel, and Scorsese decided to go this way because it is more about the FBI to some extent, the book.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting that he went, because that's a very traditional. You can make that movie easy. He decided to go a different way, and you're right. I do think there's a ceiling to it, and he got there. I don't like comparing it to Oppenheimer. Like, it's stupid. It's kind of unfair. But Oppenheimer is just like balls to the wall, beginning to end. Like, we are off to the races. This is not that. So yeah, you're right. I think that's a pretty good point.
No, that's I really do. Now all I can think about it is that it's very much like, like a Thin Red Line, except just way more structured and way more. Hey, let's focus on, instead of 50 characters, let's focus in, dial in. We still have the great cinematography, still have the great music, still have all the things you really like. Production value, which, by the way, that's something else I forgot to mention in cons. Production value in this was awesome, off the charts. All the cars, all the costume, makeup, all that stuff, incredible. Made you feel like you were really there.
And the casting too. These random, just like you feel like they just grabbed them from the street.
They did.
They did, right. They did. You're right. They shot all Oklahoma. You're right. Yeah.
I love the guy that they got, which they also used him in The Irishman. The guy who murdered Anna, the drunk one. This guy, what a perfect sleazeball that guy is. This is tall, like string bean dude, and just talking about the murder like it's nothing. And he was the guy, I believe, that was going to shoot Hoffa originally in The Irishman, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I just love this dude. I don't know his name, but he was great.
Yeah.
I think we all pretty much are in agreement here. Like, can definitely consider it great, in the least very good. Just kind of falls below the top line of Scorsese, which again we will, if you're listening in podcast, doing it here, but also on our YouTube channel, we'll be dropping a tier ranking of his movies, Martin Scorsese's movies. But 92, 89, 86, 88, those are the scores, all kind of around the same ballpark. Check it out. Go see it. I mean, how many more of these you can? I mean, Kirk, I know you've mentioned it. I think we all kind of know it. Like, he essentially walked off. Like, I think you used the term walk off with that final scene. Like, how many more of these are we going to get from him? Like,
he's still talking about doing them. So, I'm there, but this would be a pretty great way to finish it, with a huge critically acclaimed movie with De Niro, DiCaprio, and
Kirk,
he literally has the last line of the movie.
Kirk, have you read The Wager? The other book?
That's what they're talking about doing next. I have read it. Yeah.
Think it's more adaptable than this? I mean, this was pretty tough to adapt.
I think so. Yeah. I think, but I mean, again, I don't, that they're going to be 3 or 4 years from now. When he's 2 years from, I don't know.
Well, that's it for our review on Killers of the Flower Moon. Make sure if you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like the video, drop your score below in the comments, and your you can give a little sentence or two, your review. Thanks, Kirk, for joining us here. For Ken, Jack, Gooch, I'm Jeff D'Lo. We'll talk to you next time.